Hey, everyone. My name is Anna, and I'm 18 years old. I'm at the top of my class, and there's nothing I love more than art and history. My room is practically a museum. I've got posters of ancient Roman buildings and Renaissance paintings all over my walls. Yeah, I'm that kid. One evening, I was in my room, sketching away when I heard my mom call, "Anna, dinner's ready." I sighed, setting my sketchbook down. Dinner time in my family is usually interesting. It's a time where I often feel a bit like the invisible child. When I walked into the dining room, my younger sister Rachel was already there, glued to her phone. She was probably texting her newest boyfriend or scrolling through social media. As usual, my mom's attention was immediately on her. "How was your day, Rachel?" Mom asked, not even glancing at me. Rachel sighed dramatically. "Boring. Mr. Adam gave me detention again. He's so unfair," she complained. Before I knew it, Dad had jumped into the conversation. "Don't worry, sweetie. We'll talk to the principal about that teacher." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Rachel skips classes and ends up in detention, but somehow, my parents always take her side. It's always the teacher's fault, never Rachel's. Meanwhile, I could ace every test in school and no one would probably notice. Then Grandpa spoke up. He's the one who never forgets about me. "And you, Anna? Anything new with you?" he asked, giving me a friendly wink. Finally, someone acknowledged me. "Oh, actually, yes," I replied, my excitement peeking through. "I got an A on my Italian test." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, cutting me off before I could say anything more. She turned right back to Rachel, asking her about her cheerleading competition that's coming up. Just like that, I faded into the background again. But I didn't let it bother me too much. At least Grandpa and Grandma cared about my interests and achievements. They always made me feel valued. Later that night, I was in my room again, counting the money I'd been saving. I called it my Rome fund. I'd been saving every dollar I could in hopes of going to Italy one day. I was only $300 away from reaching my goal, and it felt within reach. Suddenly, I heard a knock on my door. It was Grandma. "Come in," I called, quickly hiding my jar of savings. She came in with Grandpa, who was holding an envelope in his hands. "Anna, your grandfather and I have a surprise for you," Grandma said, smiling. My heart started racing. Could this be what I thought it was? Grandpa handed me the envelope, and with shaky hands, I opened it. Inside were 3 tickets to Rome. "Is this real?" I gasped, hardly believing my eyes. "Am I dreaming?" Grandma laughed and hugged me. "It's very real, sweetheart. You've worked so hard, and we know how much you love Italian culture. You deserve this." Overwhelmed with happiness, I jumped up and hugged them both tightly. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," I said, feeling like the luckiest person in the world. Finally, my dreams of seeing Italy were coming true, thanks to the people who always believed in me. I couldn't believe it. Just as I was trying to process this amazing news, my sister Rachel burst into the room. "What's all the noise about?" she demanded, looking annoyed. "I got tickets to Rome," I said, barely able to contain my excitement. "Grandma and Grandpa got them for me as a graduation gift. I had worked so hard, and this trip was something I had dreamed about for years." Rachel's face twisted in jealousy. "That's not fair," she snapped. "I'm the one who needs a vacation with all the stress I've been under." I didn't let her sour attitude bother me. Nothing could ruin this moment for me. I was too busy thinking about all the amazing places I wanted to see in Rome. As I rattled off my must-visit list, the Palatine Hill, the St. Peter's Basilica, and all the art museums, I noticed my parents standing in the doorway. Their expressions weren't exactly happy, but I shrugged it off. For once, something incredible was happening to me, and I wasn't going to let anything bring me down. The next morning, I woke up still thrilled. The Rome tickets were tucked safely under my pillow, and I couldn't stop smiling as I got ready for school. Just as I was about to leave, I heard Mom call from downstairs. "Anna, come down here, please." I hurried down, expecting to talk more about my trip. But when I entered the living room, I found my entire family sitting there, looking serious. My heart sank a little as I asked, "What's going on?" Dad cleared his throat. We've been thinking about the Rome tickets. Yeah, isn't it great? I said, smiling. I can't wait to. Mom cut me off. We think it might be better if Rachel went instead. The words hit me like a punch.
What?
I whispered, barely believing what I'd just heard. Rachel has been under a lot of stress, Dad explained. She could really use this trip. I looked at my grandparents, hoping they would back me up. They looked just as shocked as I felt. But those were my tickets, I stammered. Grandma and Grandpa gave them to me. Rachel crossed her arms and gave me a smug look. Don't be selfish, Anna. I need this more than you do. This isn't right. Grandpa spoke up firmly. We gave those tickets to Anna because she's worked so hard. Mom sighed, and Dad shrugged.
You don't understand, Dad said.
Rachel has been struggling. This could be a chance for her to relax and get back on track. What about Anna? Grandma demanded. What about her dreams? Dad waved a hand dismissively. Anna will be fine. She's always fine. The argument continued, voices growing louder, everyone talking over each other. I stood there in shock, feeling like my dream was crumbling right in front of me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Fine, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. Take the stupid tickets. I ran up to my room, slamming the door behind me. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I collapsed on my bed, devastated.
How could they do this to me?
The next few days passed in a blur. I went to school, went through the motions, but I avoided my family as much as I could. I skipped dinners and spent most of my time alone in my room, trying to block out the hurt. I was scrolling through my phone, not really paying attention to anything, when I overheard my parents arguing in their room. Their voices were tense and quiet, but I could still make out some of what they were saying. We can't keep doing this, Noah, my mom whispered urgently. The credit cards are maxed out, and the bank keeps calling about the mortgage. I know, my dad replied, sounding frustrated. But what choice do we have? We can't let Rachel's mistakes ruin her future. My ears perked up at the word, mistakes. What mistakes was he talking about? Then I heard my mom say something that made my stomach twist. Maybe if we dip into Anna's college fund again. I gasped, quickly covering my mouth so they wouldn't hear. My college fund? They'd been taking money from my college fund? Suddenly, things started to make sense. The new car Rachel got last year, the fancy cheerleading camp, the endless shopping trips, they were all funded by my college savings. I felt a wave of anger and shock. My parents had been secretly using my hard-earned savings, money set aside for my future, to cover up for Rachel's mistakes. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with questions. How long had this been going on? How much money had they taken? And what was I going to do about it? I stared at the ceiling, feeling betrayed and hurt. But as I lay there, an idea started forming in my mind. If they thought they could walk all over me and take what was mine, they had another thing coming. The next morning, I put on a fake smile and joined the family for breakfast. Rachel was talking excitedly about her upcoming trip to Rome. I'm thinking of extending my stay, she said casually, as if it was no big deal. Maybe I'll even visit New York. My parents exchanged worried glances, but neither of them said anything. I bit my tongue and stored this information away. They were still letting her do whatever she wanted, even at my expense. As I headed out for school, I made a quick decision to take a detour. I needed answers, and I knew just where to get them. I stopped by the bank to check on my accounts. What I discovered made my heart sink. My college fund was almost empty. They'd taken nearly everything. This was serious, and I needed help. I walked to school feeling determined. My best friend, Scott, was standing by his locker when I found him. I took a deep breath and went over to him. Scott, I need your help, I said, keeping my voice low. He looked at me, concerned. What's up, Liv? You look like you've seen a ghost. I glanced around to make sure no one else could hear. I need you to hack into my parents' financial records, I said quietly. Scott's eyes went wide. Whoa, that's heavy. What's going on? I quickly filled him in on everything I'd learned. Scott was shocked but didn't hesitate. All right, Liv. I'll help you. Let's get to the bottom of this. The game was on, and this time, I was ready to play. If my parents thought they could keep taking from me without consequence, they were about to learn otherwise. This was my future, and I wasn't going to let anyone steal it from me. I told Scott everything about the stolen Rome tickets, the conversation I overheard, and my nearly empty college fund. Scott listened, his face growing more serious as I talked. When I finished, he looked at me and said, "I'm in. Meet me at the library after school." For the next week, Scott and I spent every free moment digging into my family's finances. We wanted to figure out where my money and my dad's earnings had been going. What we found made me feel sick. One afternoon, Scott pointed at his laptop screen, showing me some numbers. "Your dad's been taking money from the family business for years," he said. I leaned closer, squinting at the screen. "But where is all that money going?" Scott pulled up another window on his laptop. "It looks like most of it has been covering Rachel's expenses, unpaid credit card bills, car payments, even bail money." "Bail money?" I asked, shocked. "What has she been doing?" As we looked further, the situation got even worse. My dad had been hiding things in the books, taking risky loans, and even getting involved in shady deals just to keep up with Rachel's lifestyle and cover their debts. It was clear that my family's financial problems were much bigger than I had thought. "This is unbelievable," I whispered, running my hands through my hair. "What am I supposed to do with all this?" Scott looked at me seriously. "You know what you have to do, Liv." I knew he was right, but the thought of reporting my own parents made me feel awful. They were still my family, even though they had taken my future savings and kept secrets from me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, thinking about my choices. On one hand, they were my family. On the other, they had taken what was supposed to be my future and broken my trust. By morning, I had made my decision. It was time to take action. My first stop was my grandparents' house. They had always been supportive, so I told them everything Scott and I had discovered. As I spoke, my grandma listened, tears forming in her eyes. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "How could they do this?" My grandpa looked at me with a serious expression. "What do you need from us, Anna?" I took a deep breath. "Your support," I said, "and maybe a place to stay when all of this goes down." Without hesitation, they agreed. Knowing I had them on my side made me feel a little stronger. Next, I went to see my favorite teacher, Mrs. Douglas. She had always been someone I trusted, and I needed an adult outside my family to guide me through this. When I explained everything, she looked shocked but listened carefully. "This is a big step, Anna," she said after a pause. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I nodded. "I have to. Not just for myself, but honestly for Rachel too. This can't keep going like this." Mrs. Douglas sighed, giving me a reassuring look. "All right," she said. "Let's do this right." With my grandparents and Mrs. Douglas supporting me, I knew I could move forward. It was going to be hard, but it was time to stand up for myself and make sure that what happened to my savings wouldn't ruin my future. With everyone ready to support me, Scott and I began making a plan. "We need solid proof," Scott said, "something they can't deny or talk their way out of." I thought for a moment, then remembered the upcoming family reunion. The reunion is next month. All of Dad's business partners and family will be there. It's the perfect chance. Scott's eyes lit up. Perfect. We could set up hidden cameras and maybe even get some of them talking on record. They won't know what hit them. As we planned, I felt both nervous and excited. This was big. It wasn't just an idea anymore. It was real. Scott must have noticed my worried face because he asked, "You okay?" I took a deep breath. "Yeah, it's just, once we do this, there's no going back. Everything will change." Scott gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "Sometimes change is necessary. You've got this, Liv." I nodded, feeling more determined. The countdown to the family reunion and the biggest moment of my life had officially started. When the reunion day finally arrived, my heart was pounding. Scott and I had spent weeks preparing. We'd set up hidden cameras in key spots and had a backup plan in case anything went wrong. As family members and Dad's business partners started to arrive, I put on my best smile and greeted everyone. "Hey, Uncle Kevin. How's the golf games?" I asked, forcing a cheerful tone. Meanwhile, Rachel was the center of attention in the living room, bragging about her upcoming trip to Rome. "It's going to be amazing. I might even stay for a whole month," she said, not even noticing the worried looks that Mom and Dad exchanged. It was time. I clinked my glass to get everyone's attention and took a deep breath. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, lifting my glass, "to family and to the truth." I nodded to Scott, who hit play on his laptop. Suddenly, the TV screen lit up with documents, financial records, and recorded conversations we'd gathered. Dad's face turned pale as he realized what was happening. "What is this?" he stammered, his voice shaky. "This," I said, my voice trembling but steady, "is the truth about where our family's money has been going." The room exploded into chaos. Dad's business partners were shouting, demanding explanations. Aunt Cheryl was crying, clearly horrified, and Rachel was staring at the screen in disbelief. Then, in a burst of anger, she yelled, "You can't do this to me. How am I supposed to pay for my DUI lawyer now?" The room went silent. Mom turned to Rachel, her eyes wide. "What did you just say?" Realizing her slip, Rachel's face turned red, and she looked around in a panic. She hadn't meant to reveal that, but it was too late. Everyone had heard her. The silence that followed was heavy. My parents had nowhere to hide, and the truth was out in the open. Family members looked at me with a mix of sympathy and shock, and Dad's business partners seemed furious and betrayed. For the first time, I felt a sense of power, of standing up for myself and making things right. It was painful to see my family's flaws laid out for everyone, but I knew it had to happen. It was time for a change, and I wasn't going to let anyone steal my future. As I looked around the room, I knew this was only the beginning of rebuilding my life, but I was ready for whatever came next. Rachel started spilling everything: the drunk driving, the shoplifting, the credit card fraud. Each confession seemed to crush my parents more, as their faces showed shock and defeat. With each word Rachel said, my heart felt a mix of sadness and relief. This was the truth coming out, but it was also hard to hear. Then, just as the room filled with tension, we all heard sirens in the distance. Ms. Douglas, my teacher, had kept her word and alerted the authorities. The police arrived, stepping inside with a calm but firm presence, reading out the warrants they had brought with them. Before we knew it, Dad and Rachel had handcuffs on. The reality of it all hit me. This was justice, but it was also the end of my family, as I knew it. Grandpa put his arm around my shoulder, pulling me close. "You did the right thing, Anna. We're so proud of you." His words were a small comfort in a storm of emotions. The months that followed were busy and overwhelming. Dad and Rachel both faced charges, while Mom got probation because her role in all of this had been smaller. My grandparents became my support through it all, guiding me through each day. One evening, Grandma gently asked, "How would you feel about us becoming your legal guardians?" I hugged her tightly, tears in my eyes. "I'd love that," I said. Knowing they'd be my guardians gave me a sense of safety and belonging. Then, an unexpected piece of good news arrived. The judge ruled that all the money taken from me had to be returned, including my college fund. I was amazed and so grateful. And remember those Rome tickets that started it all? They were given back to me as well. That summer, instead of sitting at home feeling sad, I found myself strolling through the Capitoline museums with my grandparents, eating gelato under the warm Italian sun. Grandpa raised his gelato cone and said, "To new beginnings." I laughed and joined the toast, to justice and gelatos. Fast forward a few years, and life is very different now. I'm a junior at a top art school, working as an intern at a well-known gallery, and I have my first solo art show coming up next month. I'm doing what I love, and every day I feel more hopeful and proud of how far I've come. As for my family, Dad is serving his time, Mom has a minimum wage job, and Rachel is going through community college, finally dealing with the consequences of her choices. Life has been tough for them, but they're each facing what they've done. For me, though, life has started fresh. I have my dreams back, I have a second chance, and I have people who love and support me. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready to face it, with my art, my friends, and the strength I've gained along the way. I'm planning my next trip to Italy, this time to study for my master's degree in Pisa. It's funny. Sometimes, losing one dream can lead to an even better one. So, that's my story. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect, but standing up for yourself is always worth it in the end. Through everything, I've learned that no matter how tough things get, it's important to value yourself and stand up for what's right. Even if it means facing hard choices and big changes, taking control of your own future matters. Now I have a question for you. Imagine you were in Anna's shoes. Would you have exposed your family's wrongdoings, knowing it could tear your family apart and lead to serious consequences for your parents and sibling? Or would you have stayed silent to protect them, even if it meant risking your own future? Please share your thoughts below. What would you do? Sometimes, hearing someone else's perspective can help us think about our own choices in new ways, especially when we're facing difficult decisions. If Anna's story of justice, courage, and finding her own path connected with you, please hit the like button. And if you'd like more stories about personal victories and resilience, subscribe to our channel.